Muhammad, the best defense in the heavyweight. The best move in the heavyweight. But shorty man, Ditty boxing. He beat him one time. Ditty boxing. Ditty boxing. Ditty boxing. Go. And take it whatever you want to do.
So we recently saw Jake Paul defeat Mike Tyson in a terrible affair. But that November 15th fight was originally scheduled for July 20th. And the fight was rescheduled due to several health problems that prevented the 58-year-old Mike Tyson from fighting on that July 20th date. So Jake Paul needed a replacement opponent for that date, with the Tyson fight still pending of course. So he got in there with the face of the bare knuckle fighting championship, Platinum Mike Perry. Now Perry couldn't quite cut it under the Queensberry rules, and was unfortunately dominated by Jake Paul and stopped in the 6th round. But that July 20th fight isn't what we're here for today. No. Literally the day before Mike Perry stepped in the ring with Jake Paul, he held a press conference announcing his new promotion, Dirty Boxing Championship. So we do love to see a fighter embark on a new business endeavour. But the fundamental question is how successful this entire new combat sport can be. Now we all love boxing and MMA for the most part, and Muay Thai and kickboxing are also very well respected sports. But in the day of slap fight, BKFC, Misfits boxing and karate combat, not putting all of those in the same boat by the way, is there really place for this Dirty Boxing Championship? And what does its rule set comprise of? Well, let's start by talking about the rules, what this sport actually entails. So at that July 19th presser, it was announced that the fights would be taking place in an 18-foot ring with 5-ounce gloves, just an ounce up from MMA gloves and a few ounces smaller than boxing gloves, depending on what weight class you're talking about when it comes to boxing. Now in the Dirty Boxing Championship, fighters are allowed to basically throw whatever they want with their arms, but are not allowed to throw kicks or knees at all. Elbows, spinning back fists, Superman punches and palm strikes are all legal. There is also no grappling involved, but you can indeed throw ground and pound shots to a downed opponent. It was also discussed at the press conference that it sort of makes for a more violent outcome and spectacle, but is actually less damaging for one's health in the long run, which is what people say about MMA in comparison to boxing. You have the choice to completely finish your opponent in a single sequence, rather than a fighter being knocked down by a concussive blow and then given a count to continue on like in boxing. And smaller gloves are deemed to be more safe for brain health in the long run as well, but that's a whole conversation about physics that we needn't go into in this little news video. Also, by the way, the fights are being contested at 3 3-minute rounds, and championship fights will be 5 3-minute rounds. So here we've got full 3-minute rounds like in boxing, as opposed to the 2-minute rounds in BKFC, and we've got the same number of rounds as MMA. Well, it's basically a similar round system to kickboxing. So all round, Dirty Boxing Championship is what we'd call a hybrid sport, or a custom rules combat sports promotion. Now let's talk about Dirty Boxing Championship from a business standpoint. So Mike Perry's business team consists of First Round Management, Adam Kovacs and Josh McClain. At the press we saw the Cower brothers of First Round Management there. First Round Management who manage many top athletes by the way. And Ibrahim Cower mentioned that he and Mike Perry started talks about this enterprise a year ago to that point. Now if you're wondering who Adam Kovacs is, he is actually a former executive of Karate Combat. So he already has some experience working on an upstart hybrid combat sports promotion or league. And also speaking at the press was Josh McClain, who is an entrepreneur who runs Kanpai Media, who look like quite an obscure company by the social media numbers, but the money's definitely there by the looks of it. This McClain guy is also the host of Mike Perry's Overdog podcast, by the way. Now the consensus at the table in regards to what they set out to do is that they will look to host crossover fights between athletes from various combat sports. And it was discussed by Ibrahim Kawa how they are basically happy for any boxer, kickboxer or MMA fighter to take a fight with Dirty Boxing Championship to make a quick bag and get some attention fighting there. And Josh McClain was discussing how the promotion would be a good platform for mid-tier boxers to step into, which he said none other than Roy Jones Jr. discussed with him. And ultimately, Mike Perry himself was forecasting the great crossover opportunities that would come out of this concept, such as a fight as big as Ryan Garcia versus Sean O'Malley, and for Perry himself, a match with Darren Till finally. But obviously as of this recording, Darren Till is scheduled to fight Tommy Fury on January the 18th. So before I give my 2 cents about the Dirty Boxing Championship and its potential, and go into a few other bits about Mike Perry, the reason I'm making this video is of course because this past weekend, Dirty Boxing Championship hosted their first event in an undisclosed location in Miami, Florida, the promotion being Florida based. Now there wasn't actually an official broadcasting of the inaugural event, but footage of a knockout surfaced on the internet. Now the only notable name on the card was none other than Mr. Ditty Boxing himself, the former UFC title challenger, Yoel Romero. I wonder if this infamous quote was inspiration for the name of this whole fighting league. Romero fought in the main event against Power Slap star Dwayne Crespo in a heavyweight bout, and Yoel Romero of course dismantled the Power Slap contestant. Now Romero is of course a massive star, but most people didn't even know he was fighting. It only really surfaced in the MMA media after the fact, when clips of the KO went around. So that is some good promotion for the Dirty Boxing Championship, or former UFC contender of that level fighting on their first show. But as for him fighting a slap fighter, let's hope that's not the kind of crossover we see Dirty Boxing Championship produce going forward. Another thing on Yoel, he is actually currently under contract with Bellator, who are now under the banner of PFL of course. So this shows from the off that fighters from other promotions will be coming in for one-off paychecks by the looks of it. But if this guy is as high level as Yoel Romero doing that, then this will be great publicity for the upstart promotion. Now as far as the rest of the card outside of Yoel Romero, I mean no disrespect to the fighters, but you can see why Dirty Boxing Championship hasn't gone to great lengths to have this event televised. It seems as if most of the fighters on the card are regional scene MMA fighters with a couple of boxing journeymen in there. Now the only way you can hope to get the attention of the masses through unknown fighters is through highlight reel KOs or just highlight reel worthy clips in general. And we did see a clip of two guys trading spinning back fists and a clip of a Superman punch knockdown, which is of course a perfect way to sell the fact that those are legal strikes in this world. And then there was that ground and pound clip where the guy was just pounding away at his opponent's body and then had to get pulled off and held back by some manager or something. Now I know that makes it look like an outlaw mod show, but I just found that funny, I can't lie. Actually wait, it turns out it was former BKFC light heavyweight champion Lorenzo Hunt who was holding that fighter back. So yeah, on that note, this new promotion, invented by a bare knuckle fighter and having his first event held behind closed doors, might make it seem like some train wreck or car crash TV type deal, especially with the name. But personally, I think the concept is pretty cool. It may seem random and or convoluted, but here's the thing, every form of martial arts competition are just different forms of restricted fighting, and this particular set of restrictions works well for entertainment value as far as I see it. Call it Muay Thai without kicks or boxing with elbows. Ultimately, the lack of kicks allows the fighter to trade shots in an exclusively boxing style of stance, but they are now allowed to throw elbows in close. So this is a great platform for crossover fights. I'm sure a lot of boxers don't want to ever be trading leg kicks in there, but I'm sure they won't complain about being able to throw a cheeky elbow off of their punches. I'm sure everyone who's only trained and competed in boxing and couldn't throw a kick to save their life has thrown up a little spinning elbow on the punching bag, right? And some of the dirtier boxers make use of their elbow in a fight anyway. Hence dirty boxing, I suppose. And as far as MMA guys go, although kicks are ruled out, when an MMA guy crosses over into boxing, they are used to throwing other stuff with their arms other than punches. So in Dirty Boxing Championship, they can do whatever they want with their upper limbs. And of course the glove size is closer to their glove size. And as for there being no grappling, but ground and pound being allowed, well this will be really fun for the MMA fighters with a boxing heavy style, won't it? So yeah, all round I like the mix of rules a lot actually. So will this bare knuckle fighter be able to build up this promotion to reach the level of success of Bare Knuckle Fighting Championship? Well, BKFC first got real mainstream popularity, well, maybe not mainstream, but let's say reached the scope of the casual combat sports fan, when former boxing world champion Paulie Malignaggi squared off against the former UFC fighter and training partner of Conor McGregor, Artem Lobov. The build-up of this fight got a lot of attention from boxing and MMA media, thus it created good crossover appeal. Despite former boxing world champion and Canelo foe Austin Trout being a current BKFC champion, for the most part it has been MMA fighters who have brought the most attention to BKFC, and if you're an MMA fan, even if you rebuke the concept of BKFC and don't like your favourite fighters of the past going and take more punishment and damage when they're supposedly washed up, every MMA fan had that one fight that pulled them into BKFC eventually, even if it wasn't until Eddie Alvarez came along in 2023 and fought fellow former UFC titleist Chad Mendes. So now to get to Mike Perry and the BKFC. So Mike Perry was a popular UFC fighter, but wasn't a high rank contender, and his contract expired with the UFC in 2021 after going 7-8 in the promotion. So Dana White opted not to re-sign Mike Perry, set him off for this BKFC arc so to speak. Spanning from February of 2022 until April of this year, Perry has gone 5-0 in the BKFC, with all 5 of his opponents being notable MMA fighters. First being former Ultimate Fighter contestant Julian Lane, known for this viral moment.
Bang, man! What do you do with that, man? I do. I do. Let me bang. I do let you bang. Hey. Let me bang again, man. I let you bang. I let you bang. Let me bang. I let you bang. I let you bang.
And Lane was a 6-fight BKFC veteran coming into this fight with the debutant of the sport Mike Perry. Perry got the decision winning that one. Then came Perry's fight against the former Bellator star Michael Venom Page, who was known for viral highlight reel KOs. Perry went on to get the decision winning that fight as well to go to 2-0 in the BKFC. Then Perry faced off against former UFC middleweight champion Luke Rockhold, and Perry took a piece out of Rockhold's front tooth in a bloody affair, and this led to Rockhold actually quitting, so a stoppage win over a former UFC champion to move Perry to 3-0. Next up came a fight against another former UFC champion in the former UFC lightweight champion Eddie Alvarez. Now this I personally recall watching live off the back of a full night of fighting. The stacked UFC fight night headlined by Arman Tsarukyan vs Beneil Dariush was taking place a few hours earlier than the average UFC fight night, so I watched that whole joint, and thanks to the earlier finish to the UFC card, I got to watch it until the end before the Ryan Garcia vs Oscar Duarte fight, which started at like 5 AM UK time of course. Then the Mike Perry vs Eddie Alvarez BKFC main event actually started a good while after the Garcia fight happened, so it was nearly like 7 in the morning here I think when that one was finally starting, and boy was it worth staying up for, while it lasted. The two men engaged in a back and forth firefight over the 2 2-minute rounds it lasted for. But after the second round, Eddie Alvarez's corner stopped the fight due to an eye injury Eddie suffered from. Man, I was disappointed that I didn't get to see that one continue at the time. But that was 2 stoppage victories in a row over 2 former UFC world champions for Perry to move him to 4-0. Then came his last BKFC fight to date, against 27-fight UFC veteran and former BKFC middleweight world champion Thiago Alves. Perry knocked Alves out in the first round to go 5-0 in the BKFC. So it really worked out, didn't it? Mike Perry was technically a UFC reject, but he grew his name in BKFC and became the face of the promotion and the sport of bare knuckle in the process, and he single-handedly grew the success of the entire promotion considerably. Mike Perry was a great match for BKFC, and BKFC was a great match for Mike Perry. So what happened after Mike Perry defeated Thiago Alves back in April of this year? Well, none other than the notorious Conor McGregor announced himself as a part owner of the BKFC.
Conor McGregor, myself, and McGregor Sports and Entertainment is now an owner of Bare Knuckle Fighting Championship. Welcome to the big leagues. David Feldman, baby, we did it.
And although the situation I'm about to go into is not serious in all likelihood, I still want to go through the order of events quickly. So of course, Mike Perry's next fight after his win over Thiago Alves in the BKFC was the aforementioned boxing match with Jake Paul. So everything sort of interlinks, doesn't it? And in the build up to this fight, the new part owner of BKFC, Conor McGregor, was hyping up Mike Perry, talking about how Mike was going to beat Jake Paul. But straight after Mike Perry lost to Jake Paul, McGregor went on one of his infamous Twitter rants, in which he actually fired Mike Perry from the BKFC. Wow, the undefeated King of Violence champion had now been fired by the new volatile part owner of the BKFC, after losing in a different sport. And McGregor of course said, as you can see on screen here, that he can go and compete in his smelly, dirty boxing championship. The smell of it! That's insane. I was thinking of referring to Dirty Boxing Championship as Ditty Boxing Championship for a joke in reference to the Yoel Romero gimmick, but Smelly Dirty Boxing Championship might take it, I'll be honest. But since then, from what Mike Perry says, it seems that this firing is not serious. Well, very recently, as of this recording, he said on the Ariel Helwani show that he has 3 fights left on his BKFC contract, but hasn't yet heard from BKFC president Glenn Feldman. And even back in the post-fight pressure of the Jake Paul fight, Perry dismissed the legitimacy of the firing and has basically continued to talk since about fighting in the BKFC as normal. But McGregor himself has spoke since as if Mike Perry is still fired. But yeah, I don't think this whole thing is serious. If it is though, wouldn't that be mad? Announces his new promotion on the day before the fight with Jake Paul on weigh-in day. Well, not that he was cutting weight because his fight with Jake Paul was a mismatch weight-wise. Then loses the boxing match the next day. Then gets fired from the BKFC on the night of his boxing loss, despite being the undefeated face of the BKFC still, then embarks on building his own promotion. What a knock. But obviously without him being fired from the BKFC, Mike Perry going off to start his own promotion is still a great story. One more thing actually, on the Ariel Helwani show, I learned another thing about the Dirty Boxing Championship rule set, and that there will be an extra round in case of a draw, and potentially 2 extra rounds when it's a title fight. But yeah, what do you guys think about this Dirty Boxing Championship then? I can understand if people aren't too optimistic about it. Although Mike Perry has spoken about fighting in it himself, he still seems to be very preoccupied about his future with the BKFC. Also, there's this whole thing with the Karate Combat president Azim Zaidi basically saying that Adam Kovac got in on this dirty boxing thing out of spite because Zaidi took his spot in Karate Combat, and that Kovac tried to copy Karate Combat's fight pit and what have you, and that Dirty Boxing Championship are now trying to work with Karate Combat or something, but this situation isn't fully clear. I'm sure more will come out about that. But regardless of those 2 factors, people probably think that this is just going to be at best another platform for washed up UFC fighters to compete in, again no different from the BKFC or Karate Combat, but on a lower level of notoriety this time. But me personally, I look forward to seeing what Mike Perry can do with this, and it's great to see a fighter actually go on to start a promotion, and I wish him well and hope to see him set up the big fights that he's talking about. Although his work in the ring built up the BKFC a good bit, who would have thought he could go on and start his own whole promotion? Great stuff. He might be seen as a bit of a brain damaged nut.
Some niggas got go to college. Ooh, some niggas go to jail. Some niggas go to jail. Some niggas go to jail.
But look, after basically being cut from the UFC, it's been a great journey for Mike. And look where he's at now. And imagine if his business grows to be even half of what the BKFC is. That would be amazing. Even if it's just setting up fights between old UFC fighters, I'll be happy for him to make a bag off of setting that up in the Dirty Boxing Championship. It's been cool to see Jorge Masvidal do it with Gamebred Promotions. I'll be honest, I haven't actually watched any of those bare knuckle MMA fights that he promoted, but I did catch some of that one Gamebred boxing card. And although it consisted of a random lineup of old fighters, I did actually really enjoy that fight between Jose Aldo and Jeremy Stevens. So I'd like to see the Dirty Boxing Championship put on fun fights like that in their next show. And I personally foresee Mike Perry's Dirty Boxing Championship overtaking Gamebred Promotions in overall success pretty quickly, but I do still wish the best for Jorge Masvidal in his endeavours, of course. Another thing that I thought I should mention is that Jon Jones was in attendance for the first Dirty Boxing Championship event this past weekend, which of course got some good attention amongst MMA media. And he was talking up what Perry has done since leaving the UFC, which was cool to hear. And just giving great credence to Perry's promotional effort, which are meaningful words from the UFC heavyweight champion of the world, and the UFC GOAT arguably. You know, forget about Omega Mo like me talking the whole thing up.
Mike Perry is one of the realest niggas who ever lived.
I know Jones and Mike are under the same management team, but Big Jon Jones didn't have to attend this event if he didn't want to, let's be honest. But yeah, before I close out, I'm not going to speculate about potential Dirty Boxing Championship matchups, because we have no idea where they are going with that. We don't even know when their second event is going to be. But I'm sure when they get it televised and start selling tickets and the betting lines open for the fights, then people are going to be drawn in. But as for Perry himself, whatever setting it takes place in, I just want to see him fight Conor McGregor, because that's brewed up to be a storied rivalry, hasn't it? And with all the recent stuff going on with McGregor, this might be the best way back into the fight game for him. Or maybe a boxing match with Jake Paul, which would obviously do mad numbers. But yeah, you guys let me know what you think about Dirty Boxing Championship in the comments down below. What heights do you think the promotion will reach? What fights would you like to see under that rule set? Do you want to see Mike Perry fight on with the BKFC or focus fully on his new promotion and what have you? And yeah, you have been listening to no, please. I can't end there. I can't. So you see at the start of the video, the first thing I did mention was Mike Tyson versus Jake Paul. Well, I'm going to have to bring it full circle now and talk about that fight again. So that fight did go the distance, and obviously I didn't realise until after I recorded my last video, which I'm about to get into my last video, that it's actually on Mike Tyson's pro boxing record. So even though that's Mike Tyson's 7th loss on his pro boxing record now, it is his first professional loss that went the distance. So yes, prior to fighting Jake Paul, Mike Tyson was undefeated in fights that went the distance. So there was 5 fights that he went the distance in before. And in my previous video, I ranked the fights that Mike Tyson went the distance in by entertainment value. And it was a really, it was quite a long video, but I worked really hard on it. It was a well put together video. And now I think it got shadow banned because the views in it are actually ridiculous, in a bad way, of course. Because if you look at the views on the videos on my channel compared to that one, my very last video, it's ridiculous. And yeah, I worked very hard on that video, but I reckon if it did get shadow banned, it's probably because I briefly mentioned the crime that Mike Tyson was convicted of in 1992. And even though I put the G in front, naming the name of the fruit, which is ridiculous that you have to do that, I think I still got shadow banned for it anyway. So yeah, I don't often do this. I don't often try and plug other videos in a separate video, but I'm gonna leave a link in the description, and I am actually gonna leave it up on the screen, which I don't usually do. You can click on that. Again, I'm not monetized yet, so you're not gonna get an ad. If you could just click on it and give it a view, that'd be much appreciated. But yeah, obviously I'm gonna be careful what I speak about in the future because I'm walking on eggshells here, trying to make it to 1K subscribers. So yeah, just if you can even just click on that video just for a second, that'd be much appreciated. And of course, thank you for listening to this video in full as well. If you made it to this point and you have been listening to O.M.E. Boxing.